As a way of centering us in our time, I want to share with you Psalms 99, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. The Lord rules, the nations shake. He sits enthroned on a winged heavenly creature. The earth quakes. The Lord is great in Zion. He is exalted over all the nations. Let them thank your great and awesome name. He is holy. Strong King who loves justice, you are the one who established what is fair. You work justice and righteousness in Jacob. Magnify the Lord our God. Bow low at his footstep. He is holy. Moses and Aaron were among his priests. Samuel too among those who called on his name. They cried out to the Lord, and he himself answered them. He spoke to them through pillar of a cloud. They kept the laws and the rules God gave to them. Lord our God, you answered them. To them you were a God who forgives, but also the one who avenged their wrong deeds. Magnify the Lord our God. Bow low at his holy mountain, because the Lord our God is holy. Amen. Hi, I want to welcome you to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VH Sonny Dixon Jr., the pastor here at Hobson, and I'm in for my weekly conversation with my son Trey as he helps me to transition from a time of study and reflection and meditating on the scripture to try and help me to put it into some context on what's going on with us, what's going on in the life of the church, and just so that we might have some context, so that hopefully that the message that will be delivered on Sunday will be one that will be relevant and that people are able to connect with. It's also an opportunity for me to be able to connect with you, because more than likely, for most of the people that I hear from, you are not people who attend with us on a regular basis, and so you let us know that maybe there was something we said that challenged you to look at the scripture a little differently, or maybe there was something that was comforting in the midst of a time where you were going through something. And regardless of the case, we deeply appreciate you spending some time with us. We know that there are a lot of places and a lot of things that are calling for your attention, and the fact that you would spend a little time with us means a great deal to us. I want to also invite you that if there are things that you want to hear, some subjects, particularly in the conversation that Trey and I have, that you want to hear about, then please do not hesitate in letting me know, because after all, if it's you, and we want this to, while it helps me, we want it to also be something that is inspiring to you also. So thank you for tuning in. Whenever we gather at Hobson, we spend time in sharing with one another those things that are upon our heart, that give us a sense of joy, and those things which give us some concern. We know that as a practice for us, that the prayers that we offer, that God already knows those prayers before we speak them, but it is an opportunity for us as a community to share in those times together, to be praying for one another, and also to say to God, we want to be used as an instrument of grace in the ways that we can, that if we can be used by God to be answer to the prayers that we have lifted up, then certainly we want to offer ourselves up for that. But it is a way of keeping us connected with one another, and so I invite you, if there are things that you want us to be in prayer for, then I do ask that you send those to us. A part of our celebrating each week is that we like to celebrate birthdays. For it gives us an opportunity to really, in our own personal lives when birthdays come up, but in the lives of those in the congregation, to be able to look back and to see what God is doing, has done in our lives, and to anticipate together what God might be doing in the future and using us. So we celebrate birthdays for that. And this week, As a part of our birthday celebrations, we want to lift up Harvey Hoskin, Monica Townsend, Dr. Brenda Elliott, and also congratulate her on a new position that she got, and she's back in the state now. So we celebrate the birthday that will be coming up. Francisca Beamer Munoz, Martha Lowe, Fael Delk, Evan Wesley, Tiffany Neblett, Susan Hudson McBride, Smitty McLean, Jr., Eric Cole, Benita Nichols, Connie Swain, Amy Hoskin, Jody Smith, Glenn Carter, Lori Coleman, Lewis Dixon, William Gill, Gail Smith, Margaret Whitfield, and Allison Gossett. I want to send out our birthday shout-outs to them, and I may have missed one, Benita Nichols, I think. But anyway, those are our birthdays for this week. If you know those people, please give them a shout-out and tell them that Pastor Sonny told you to give them a shout-out. And then we also want to remember a couple of families of whom the anniversary of the death of their loved one is this week, and we ask for prayers for the family and friends of Zelma Waller, and then Janora Taylor Wilson, and particular her husband and their children. And then we continue to offer prayers for what is happening in the Middle East and the violence that is taking place, and so on the day that we're recording, the President Biden went and met over there. So we're hoping that the channels for aid will be open up, and hopefully that they are moving to a place of trying to resolve and to come up with a ceasefire, because it is the innocent and whose lives are being taken and still just can't get over the life of the babies and shot in cribs and beheaded. And we've got to put an end to that evilness that is taking place. So we ask for you to continue to be in prayer, and prayer for all of those around the world who may not be directly impacted, but the violence itself is impacting their lives. And so we offer prayers for that. We ask for prayers for we're having in this fall season, and moving, and churches are having charge conferences, and we're getting ready for our charge conference here at Hobson. So we're praying for all of those, for the decisions that they're making that will impact their ministries over the coming year. And so we're just in prayer for one another. If you have any special prayers, concerns that you want us to be in prayer for, want me to be in prayer for, please do not hesitate in reaching out and letting me know. Most of the prayers that you all reach out to me are not ones that I share online, because you just want to know that someone outside of yourself is offering up those prayers, and so I do that, and it means a lot when you invite me to be a part and be a partner with you in the prayer over a particular situation is going through. So we give thanks for that, and I just ask that you keep us in your prayers, for certainly we will keep you in ours. Our passage for this week comes from Matthew's Gospel, the 22nd chapter, and today we'll be sharing with you verses 15 through 22. It's a short passage this week, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. Then the Pharisees met together to find a way to trap Jesus in his words, and they sent their disciples along with the supporters of Herod to him. "Teachers," they said, "you know that you are genuine and that you teach God's way as it really is. We know that you're not swayed by people's opinions because you don't show favoritism. So tell us what you think. Does the law allow people to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Knowing their evil motives, Jesus replied, "Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used to pay the taxes." And they brought him a denarius. "Whose image and inscription is on this?" he asked. "Caesar's," they replied. And then he said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." When they heard this, they were astonished, and they departed. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, for the last 4 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks, we have been, as it reads in Matthew, it's almost like it's been just one conversation, one event. Maybe today's passage kind of lets us know maybe that there was a break from where we have been, but certainly uh, Jesus' arrival, that he came in on Palm Sunday, and the events that have been going on and the challenges that have come from the Pharisees are going in a slightly different direction. For the last few weeks, they've been questioning his authority. Certainly, after he's turned over tables and challenged them, and the Pharisees are just having a real difficult time with Jesus and have decided that he's got to go. And particularly when it seems that the questions and the parables that he's been sharing with them, it seems like in every case he kind of gets the best of them. So they don't just want him gone; they want him dead. And so our passage today is a way and an attempt that they are trying to put together. I really wish we had that Matthew may have shared some of the conversation, because I'm sure we know what happens with the story, but maybe some people had shared some of it with it, because I want to know who approached who, whether it was the Pharisees that approached the Herodians, or whether the Herodians pressed in on with the Pharisees, because normally those two groups did not get along, and it just goes to point that sometimes when we have a common enemy, is that we will come together. We'll put aside our differences, and when ultimately we have a person or entity or thing that we just don't like, we'll come together for that. And that's what's happening in this story. The Pharisees were people, in particular, against the backdrop of what's been happening in our world. The Pharisees were those who wanted an independent Israel. It was under occupation from Rome, and they wanted to be separated from that. They did no longer want to be under that rule. The Herodians, on the other hand, were people, while they were also Jews, but they were people of whom had at least worked out some deals and had come complicit with Rome in supporting of Herod, maybe for the sake of positions or whatever. And so their position was, look, we're under occupation. Let's work out the best deals for ourselves. But now, this one that Jesus is in town, and Jesus is threatening both of them, because on the one hand, he is saying that the Pharisees and their rules and the things they've been putting together have taken advantage of the people, and so has certainly the Roman government. And so while this common interest of wanting him gone is to self-serve, is self-serving for themselves, and so they have. We take by the question that is asked is that they finally decide, okay, this is a question, and regardless of how he answers this question, they are convinced we're going to get it, because if the Pharisees said that If we're asking him about paying taxes, if he says yes, then the Pharisee says, okay, then the people, the church is going, they're going to be opposed to them because they don't like this practice that they're having to do. And then if he says to them, then no, you shouldn't, then the Herodians are going to be upset, and then certainly they're going to go back and tell Herod, and it will be a reason. A lot of people say, it really did not matter for them because whatever way that he answered the question, that he was going to have some people who were upset with him. But I honestly do believe that that the Pharisees, not because they wanted Jesus to somewhat side with them, I think they really wanted Jesus' answer to be no, not to pay the taxes, because ultimately they wanted him dead, and they knew, and we will learn later that they can't kill Jesus. That has to be done by the government in power. So I think they really wanted him to side in favor of not paying taxes, not because they didn't want to pay taxes, but because ultimately it would mean that he would be viewed as an enemy by Herod. But Jesus really doesn't answer the question to them. And Jesus instead asks them a question and says, show me, show me a coin. And I think it's interesting that he asked this question after they've have flattered him and said, look, we know that you're genuine and you're a real teacher and you don't take any stuff off of anybody. You speak your mind, and so we really, we impressed with you. So whatever the answer you give us, we're going with it. We're going with it. But Jesus, as I say, doesn't answer it. In fact, Jesus then just says, look, I want you to show me a coin. And I'm always challenge you to place yourself in the story, and what are the things that you get out of it? What are the things that you kind of see? One of the things that for me that's missing in the story that I would like to know, because when he asked them to show the coin, and they pull out a coin, of course we know that it's a coin that has the image of the emperor on it. Caesar, I want to know who handed him the coin. Whether it was one who was a Pharisee that handed him a coin, or whether it was a Herodian. Either one of them, they're in the temple, and the mere fact that they've got a coin kind of exposes them, because if they had come to the temple not for the purpose of trying to trap him or to go up against him, that they should have been there for the purpose of worship, and they would have been there to pay the temple tax. And for them to pay the temple tax, that they would have had to outside, because we've already known, and maybe as I share with you, maybe I'm thinking about it. Well, maybe they were going to exchange their money, because they would have changed the denarian over into shekels, so that they would have been able to pay the temple tax. But maybe that's what brought them over there. So they went to the table, and Jesus turned over the table, and they couldn't change. Maybe that's why they have. Anyway, that's just kind of me looking at the story. But he asked for a coin. And then when he holds out this coin and he looks at it, and he asks him, he says, whose image is on this? And they say, Caesar. And Jesus gives that line that we all know, whether or not we really know the story and the backdrop of the story. We remember that line because it says, Jesus says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and what belongs to God, give to God. Um, and that's important for them, and it's important for us because it does say to them, who is it that uh, you believe in? Who is your identity? Because he has told them that they are made in the image of God, and so that which belongs and that where your priorities are. Now we've looked at it, differently. We've gone down through the time, and of course. We all live in societies where taxes are very much a part of what we have, and I would believe even today that Jesus would not be opposed to supporting those institutions and having government spending. I mean, we look at things are like roads and schools and so I don't think that he would be opposed. But also he wants us to know that we also belong to God, that we that in that image, and so where are our priorities, and how do we know, and how does the world know to whom we owe our allegiance to, and so I'm talk with Trey here in just a few minutes about this whole idea around identity, and that's where we're going to probably go with this on Sunday. Is for us in kind of shaping out and looking at ourselves, and one, do we believe that we are made in the image of God, and then how is it that we honor that, and how is it that we recognize and where our priorities, and how we just live out who we believe that we are. So that's where we're going to go, and then I want to work a little bit more of it out in my conversation with Trey. Amen. Well, before we get into our conversation, how are things with you, Mr. Dixon?
Things are going pretty good. No complaints.
How was your day?
My day was it was all right. I was on a few calls earlier today, and then I had some things to take care of. But outside of that, it was all good.
All right, all right. Uh, Today, I think, was the first day that, even though I gotten a haircut, um, last week, but it was. I guess he'd been thinking about it. Mason had been thinking about it, so he came. He rubbed on my face, and he said, "Grandpa, you trying to be like me?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to be like you." So he brought to brought to his brought that to my attention. So, um, well, and one more check in before we go into where I want to talk to you about tonight, and that is how was last weekend? Last
Oh,
weekend we were talking about.
yeah. Last weekend was pretty fun, man. Was able to hang out with some my fraternity brothers and spend some quality time with them, and just kind of hanging out, doing the whole homecoming thing. It was pretty good.
And so, what do you think about Eddie George's comments that he's had this week about? He was a little critical of TSU fan support, and he was critical of those who came for maybe for homecoming and who either did not come in because they were outside tailgating or left early. What's your
Oh
thoughts
man,
on that?
that's kind of the way it's always been. I don't think that you know Eddie George's comments are unique to him or any other coach that has been successful. Let's put it that way at Tennessee State University. That, as far as I can remember, there's always been a crowd of people that don't care about what the football team is going to do or care about the game and that aspect of it. So I don't think that it'll be any different, depending on what he says. So you're gonna have those people.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I went to the game. I was able to, sit down and watch the team play for a little while. Sit next to some Norfolk State people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they were. It seemed like they traveled pretty good to the game. It was quite a few of them. Saw the band show. But I mean, that's what some people do. I'm gonna go in at halftime, watch the band, and I'm out.
Right.
And this is what I was hearing some people talk about in regards to that, is that we're in a stadium that is it's not really our home. It's not really our home. So it'd be different, if we were playing homecoming in the hole or whatever, and we had that dedicated space for tailgating, and for that you might get a better turnout to the game if it was in our own kind of stadium.
Yeah.
But
Well, I was one of whom, when the deal was made, I guess, 20 some years ago, to go in and to allocate money that would have come to Tennessee State to go toward that stadium, so it would be our place. So back then, I think it was Adelphia. It would be a place. I was one of whom said, "Look, we need to have an on-campus facility, and it probably needed to be somewhere around 30,000." And at that point in time, Tennessee State was, played, 3 or 4 classics a year, where the average attendance was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of around 45, thousand. And so, no, we need to have this, and we need that. And I said, all that's going to change. All that's going to change when you get in, and as you're beginning to move, in particular, the fact that, we now have a pro team. And a lot of the people of whom were football fans then started becoming, then Oilers, but then ultimately, Titans fans. And, I heard it was a good crowd from Nashville that went over to see the Titans play. I am sure that there in that number were some people who historically have been Tennessee State fans, but now in this new world, they are probably more identified as being Titans fan as opposed to being TSU fans. And that's what I want to kind of talk about, is this whole idea around identity, and how people recognize us, and the ways that they recognize us. I mean, there are some people, in particular, as I was thinking about this, and looking Facebook. I mean, I determine, most of the people on there I know in some capacity. I don't just take anybody's request to be a friend, so I know them. But and I generally identify them as out of a particular group that they're in, and you can tell, and the priorities are such, and as I say, one person of whom I would have said 15 years ago, 15, 16 years ago, was a diehard TSU fan, and would have been one of those that you would have seen, and what the game was in, what the Circle City Classic in Indianapolis, and what was the one called in Atlanta where FAMU.
The Atlanta Classic.
The Atlanta Classic,
yeah.
right, or the Southern Heritage Classic, and so they would have gone to that. But now, you look on their Facebook, they look on their Facebook page, and they're all Titan this and all of the kind of, and so now I kind of identify them as a Titan fan, and I would not have even expected them. And I was a little surprised. I said, well, maybe they would do homecoming, but they had all their pictures posted where they were over in London and going forth. I was like, wow, and so so those things, and I think all of us um, have have certain identities that we have for ourselves, and so what are some of the identities, and how are ways that people identify you?
Oh well, I mean, I mean that's a loaded question.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, it depends on who you who's talking, I guess. And are you saying that I identify or other people identify? I can't.
Well,
What was your question?
well, I think people identify us
Uh-huh.
and see us out of our habits. As I say, 15 years ago, this couple I would have said were diehard TSU fans, and I
Right.
identified them, and I had my images of seeing them, at places like the Circle City Classic, and traveling and going around, and you know there would be times we'd be on the road and stop and would eat together and all that kind of stuff. So that was my identity of them,
Right.
and
Right.
I could pretty much would have said, somebody would say, who's going to be at the game? I would have bet, they would have been at
Sure. Sure.
the game. But now, I know they've gotten all Titan stuff, and they got Titan lights and plates, and they got Titan flags in the
Right. Right.
yard
Right.
and all
Right.
of that. So I identify them as a Titan fan, even though they are not. I mean, I'm more than sure that there are other aspects of them, but they are real open in displaying who they are as Titan fans. So I
Right.
would
Right.
say
Right.
that they're that. I also know that they also used to be used to be educators. I don't think they're still in the school system now, but I also recognize them as school because that's the places that I saw them.
Sure.
And even if I saw them outside of a different context, I was able to recognize them by putting them back in the context of where I
Sure.
could see
Sure.
them.
Sure.
So that's what I was talking
Okay.
about. So
Um.
who do you think that people, if they were putting
Uh
labels
huh.
on you,
Uh huh.
uh, what are some of the labels
Sure.
that you think people put on you?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, just like I said, just depending on where I am, what circle that I am. I mean, I could be identified as, or I would use the identity of, I'm Sonny's son. I'm Vernon H. Dixon the third, Sonny Dixon's son. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I know you dad, this, that, and the third. Or I could be Sonia Dixon's brother. Just depending upon, yeah, you're in Nashville. You may have went to Whites Creek, but you may have graduated 95, 94, and you would know my sister from that type of era and kind of make that tie together. In college, I would be the light skinned Sigma,
Yeah, right.
the Sigma from Nashville. To kind of identify as that. And when you're talking about teams, that there are a few Eagles fans around, but I mean, I might be the only Eagle fan that is in my circle, so I would be the 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 Eagle fan, the Philadelphia
Right,
Eagle band fandom president, so to speak.
right,
So
yeah.
yeah, those would be some identities that I think that are pretty solid that other people would use, to describe me to someone else.
Okay, okay. Um,
Yep, yep. I mean, professionally, I mean,
yeah,
it would
yeah.
depend. It would so a lot of people that are in this particular area, know me from working at UPS and kind of hiring a lot of people at UPS. So uh, for a while, I used to run into people all the time that, oh man, you hired me at UPS and this, that, and the third, and you just start to, recognize that the impact that you have on people from that side of it. That people remember that, and then of course working with the prison.
Mm-hmm.
You have people that you know kind of relied on me from the aspect of human resources as being the human resources guy. So and I'm comfortable with those titles and that identity as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the where I'm kind of thinking about looking at for Sunday is that when we do things and we do things well, or when we hold true to ourselves and do so unashamedly, then I think we get recognized for how we may stand out. So the mere fact that you are when you talked about in your circle, you may be the only Eagles fan in the circle. People know that, and people respect you as being okay. He's true. He's not one of these fly. People would not recognize me as a fan of any particular team because I have no great loyalty to any of the NFL teams. I used to be. I was I was maybe an Oilers fan because of Earl Campbell. I was an Earl Campbell fan, and then once they came to Tennessee, I looked forward and was getting into it, and really was into it, until they did change the name. I don't know who the Titans are, as the Oilers, and everybody said, well, we had to take on a new identity, and we had to do this, and we had to do. I said, well, you take on a new identity. I'm not into that identity. I'm into that other identity that I knew. I'm into that, and I think they're going back to the old uniforms, the old Oiler base for that for a couple of games here soon. But for me, it was no longer that same team because it had taken on it had taken on a new identity, and I think that is and how people treat us and the respect that people have is whether or not the identity and how we conduct ourselves. So as you said, people will say, "Oh man, that's the guy who was at UPS, or that was the guy who was at the prison. That was the guy who took care of me. That was the guy of whom I knew where he was coming from. He was straight up, and you lived in that identity. That is hard for us to establish identity when we wishy-washy and when we don't hold true to who we want to project ourselves to be. And so when we get to the place, well, if people say, well, you Sonny's son in that, then that came with some expectation. Or if you were Sonia's brother, or whatever the title comes, people, I think, expect us to be able to do, and how we honor that. And I really do believe that the people of whom we have as role models are people who really live into the identity that they project, and you can see the faithfulness in that, and you can see the diligence. I mean, the people of whom man, that's a great running back, or that's a great you see the work, you see the dedication, you see all of the input that is in that, and so I wonder, and I do question in this time, that a lot of the people of whom we may want to say, oh man, I'm made in the image of God. But there's nothing about the way we conduct our lives that would reflect that image, or that people would say, it's always, kind of a marvel, when you say, I went to visit with some friends last night who I used to do school stuff with, and so of course they hadn't seen Mason since my birthday party last year. So they look, oh, he's gone. Oh, he's looking more like. I mean, he's always looked like Trey. He's looking more like Trey. And the expectation, and even and I say, because you've already have in your mind that that's what you want, and so when they asked for the pictures, I think they'd already made up in their mind what they were going to say about the pictures because of who you are, the relationship, and how they know you, and about Mason. And I just wish that 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 some of us, well, I wish all of us, but some of us who want to claim that we're made in the image, we certainly don't reflect that, and I think we reflect our priorities and the things that really do matter to us. And if that was one of the things that really do matter to us, I think a lot of us would act in a totally different way. Some of the worst people, I know are people who are in church, and I just, and then you want at people will say, well, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to do that, because they see how some of us are acting who have that claim, and they say, well, if that's how your God is, then I don't want to have anything to be able to do with that. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of run down and see what's the image that you have out there, and the kind of expectations and the role models that you serve for other people.
All right.
Well, I want to thank you once again for spending a little time with us this day, and pray that things are well with you, and that people who know you and the identity that you have. I hope that one of the labels that they put on you is the label that you claim, and that is that of being a child of God, and that when people look at you, they certainly say, "Oh, yeah, I can see the likeness. I can see the likeness in that." So, take care, be well, and once again, thank you.